right now I'm feeling a little nervous, I'm feeling a little anxious, and that's okay. Like previously, I wouldn't have even allowed myself to acknowledge that that's how I feel. Is that how you feel?
Yeah.
Mm.
I'm just to the point where especially when I'm nervous, especially when I'm anxious, I laugh.
Yeah.
I laugh.
Yeah.
Because I'm uncomfortable.
And I think that this is a good starting point, really, for our discussion. Because one thing that coaching and counselling will do, it will help you identify exactly how you're feeling. And instead of, kind of numbing out and distracting yourself and avoiding and, not actually allowing yourself the time and the space to acknowledge how you're feeling, coaching and counselling will really make sure that, you are connecting to yourself first. So before we actually start, I just want to say that you may have followed me for a few years, but over the course of definitely the last 3 years, I've been able to do so much like inner work on myself, and a big part of the reason why I have been able to do like such deep work on myself is due to Charis, and I really mean that. Like without having a supportive partner, it can be so hard to allow ourselves to almost kind of open up our wounds again, and open them up to start healing them. And I'm just really grateful for the fact that I've been able to do this deep inner work, knowing and feeling the unconditional love that I have from Charis. So I just want to start off by saying that.
Just what you said about having a supportive partner, actually, I was just thinking, because I think having a supportive partner definitely helps in it kind of enables you to take a step forward towards getting some maybe professional help or coaching or whatever, in the respect that someone is there supporting you, and at that moment in time they may have more belief in you than you do. So yeah, as you were saying about having a supportive partner, it definitely helps, but I don't think it means to say obviously that
you need it.
Yeah, you don't need it, but yeah, it definitely helps.
Definitely for me. I think having that kind of like comfort and safety was the foundation that I needed to be able to start looking at the parts of myself that I'd been avoiding. So as Charis said, you don't need it, but it is beneficial if you have it. I also wanted to talk about something which you kind of started to speak about a little bit there, when you mentioned that you could either get professional help or coaching.
Oh no.
So, and this is a really good topic to speak about, because I'm sure you're not the only one that has similar feelings around coaching, and I think it's a good conversation to open up. So, what do you feel is professional about counselling, but maybe not so much about coaching? And this is just a conversation that say however you feel. Like there's
to be honest, until you just pointed that out, I didn't even realise that I didn't even pick up on what I'd actually said.
The perks of a good coach.
But yeah, I think definitely, I think for a lot of people, and I think also because I did a psychology degree as well, that has you learn about the elements of counselling and things like that. I think even more so for me, I think what sets aside coaching, I do think it's professional, but obviously then I've just said just then that I haven't thought not properly, but yeah, whatever. But yeah, I think what sets aside is the credentials. for me, when I think about coaching and I think about counselling, I would say in my brain, I'm like, yeah, counselling's professional. It's taken X amount of years at uni. It's, you know, accreditation. And yeah, and maybe it's also because I don't have the experience of coaching, which is, you know, ironic because my bloke's a coach, but I don't have the experience, and I know bits and bobs of like the things that we speak about and whatever, but yeah, I think for a lot of people it's about credentials.
Yeah, and in some ways, I mean, it's kind of a blessing and a curse. Because it's like an unregulated industry, you can end up working with someone who maybe isn't experienced enough to be able to, you know, hold the space for you to open up about, you know, potentially some painful things. Whereas with a counsellor, you almost have that safety straight away, don't you? Because you know that someone has almost gave them permission and gave them the, you know, the piece of paper to say you can do this, and if you go to a counsellor and you know, you trust that they can hold the space and hold your emotions, and you know, you feel safe.
Yeah. But do you know what, interestingly though, like even, I obviously get the perspective that you're saying that, but similarly, actually in counselling, like I've had this in my own personal experience, and I had a conversation about this when I went to an organisation last year to get a counsellor. I had a conversation with the guy that facilitates the building, and he said, you have the like assessment and things, and he said some people have been counsellors for so many years, but they're not actually that great. You know, and necessarily they haven't moved with the times, and obviously, you know, theoretically, methods don't always change, but but generations do. And when I first ever had a counsellor, like when we first met actually, remember? The first counsellor I ever had, she was great, and then we had to switch, so then I ended up getting a new counsellor at the same time, due to like, you know, timings and things like that. I didn't connect with her really, and she had years of experience, but there was something about that relationship that, you know, people also think with coaching as well, that I don't know if I trust you, I don't know if I have enough confidence in you to have enough confidence in me. And yeah, since then,
do you know what, that's a perspective that I would have not even realised, to be honest. And I think everything that you're saying actually makes a lot of sense, because from my own personal experience and the coaches that I've worked with, I know that, so I'll talk about myself. I help people with the things that I've struggled with, and to some degree still struggle with. So I have direct experience of those struggles and you know, those pains and those issues, and I know exactly how it feels to, you know, not love yourself and feel unworthy, and, you know, do things for validation and people please, and, you know, not have boundaries. And I have direct experience of that, and that's why I became a coach, because I want to help people through all the things that I've struggled with. Now, on the other hand, I think what you're saying about, you know, having credentials and, you know, going to university or whatever, people are reading from a book and like doing an exam or whatever else, and they theoretically they know it, you know, they know what to say and, you know, how to hold space and, you know, do all the things, but they may not have actually directly lived that experience themselves.
yeah,
Whereas a coach, the coaches that I've experienced and myself, create a business, and, you know, their purpose and their mission is built on that thing that they've struggled with themselves and maybe overcome, or have got themselves to a point where they can now help out others with that same thing. I find coaching a lot more specific and counselling a lot more broad. That's just my own personal view and experience of it.
yeah. do you know what I also think, unfortunately, in terms of counselling, when, you know, mental health services, as we all know, are greatly, what's the word, underfunded? No. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they're not supported.
Yeah,
I know what you're.
Yeah. Underfunded.
Yeah, that'll do.
And because of that reason, people that are seeking help via charity organisations, obviously those organisations are fantastic, but also because they are underfunded, and they don't get any help, you know, from the government and things like that, because those resources are very limited. It's kind of a case of everyone gets thrown into the same mix.
Yeah.
You know, you get who you're given. They'll try and place you as well as possible with a counsellor with that speciality, but a lot of the time you do just get whoever you're given, because that is who is available and that is what they can afford.
Yeah.
Because I do believe that, you know, going with a private counsellor, it's expensive to some people. People are like, oh, that's really expensive. In theory, it's not, when you look at all the other things you spend money on. But when you choose to go privately, you can choose. They're basically selling themselves to you, and you can choose someone with a speciality in the trauma that you want to go and deal with, or, you know, the anxiety or whatever it is that you're going for. So yeah, I do believe that obviously finance plays a big part. Well, in anything, but I think that's obviously then what about coaching is that you can, like private counselling, you get to choose that speciality of that person that you're investing in yourself, that they are going to be able to deliver to you. And I think the first time that I had counselling, I was thrown into the big
mix.
I don't know what
I think that's absolutely valid, and a perspective that I wasn't even aware of, to be honest. But you also touched on something, and I think that this is something definitely worth talking about when it comes to finances and investing in ourselves. Now, I wanted to talk about how there is still stigma when it comes to investing in ourselves. Some people feel guilty, some people feel that they're being selfish, some people don't even feel worthy enough to invest in themselves. That's a big one. But also, when you look at, say for instance, someone has just bought a car or got a car on finance, people will almost kind of celebrate that and congratulate them for getting that.
Yeah.
Also, you know, think about when people have a huge mortgage and people congratulate and celebrate them for that. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be celebrated and congratulated for that. You know, they absolutely should be. But when it comes to investing in themselves, you know, say for instance I was to go to someone and say, oh, I've just started working with a coach, this coaching package for 3 months is £5,000, let's say. Instantly, and I've had people say this to me before, and I'm sure you know other people that have said this to you. I'm sure you know people that have said this to you. Instantly they'll go, oh, that's a lot of money.
I thought that about you.
Exactly. That's exactly.
I'm with you.
That's what I mean. But yet you don't think, you know, a £15,000 car on finance is a lot of money. You don't think a £3,000 holiday is a lot of money. You don't think a 200 grand mortgage is a lot of money. Like, you don't think, you know, going out every weekend, getting pissed and ordering takeaways and, you know, spending a few £100 on, like, getting off your head is a lot of money. We're all happy to do that. So actually, I think that the deeper issue is a lack of worthiness, because we're happy to spend things on external factors, like, you know, giving us that quick dopamine hit of, oh, that feels good, oh, you know, I feel happy for about 5 minutes, But when you have to start working on all the deeper stuff, I personally think a lot of it is attached to our self-worth.
I think that, to be honest, I think, buying, obviously, yeah, people can, should be celebrated with mortgages, cars, blah, 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 blah. But, those things, the expensive clothing, the brands, the nights out, all of that is, it's very much, not that I always do this. I think it's like really good, and then I'm like,
I think it's amazing, spending money on yourself and buying yourself nice clothes and, a nice car and stuff like that.
Yeah, but that was it. The thing is, we all do that, or we're all guilty of having done that, because, like social media pretty much, it looks good to the eye. It looks good to the external eye of your neighbour next door, your friends at school, college, university, in the office, blah, 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 blah. It all looks good. It's the same with, it's the same with what anyone wants to do with their body is their prerogative, but it's the same with plastic surgeries and things like that. People would rather fake looking like they're wealthy, like they're
happy.
Happy, like, they've really achieved their life, rather than invest in emotional and psychological health, because that doesn't look good. If you say, oh, I've invested in a coach, or I've invested in, a counsellor or whatever, stereotypically, that doesn't look good.
And people also, they do see that as something that instantly people think, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
But instantly they see it as something is wrong with you.
Yeah. Do you know what? I actually had a thing, and I know it's good intention, but I was telling someone, so I've recently returned to counselling. I went last year. I came away. I felt fantastic. A return is what it is. I recently told someone at work. I said, I'm going back to counselling. I'm having my first session today, and immediately. And it was nothing for me to say it, because I'm proud of it and I know it's beneficial for me. And to be honest, as crazy as it is, I enjoy it, because I know the emotional release is massive, and I know how freeing it is to go. And as painful and heartbreaking as that work is, the process is, it's life changing. Like, anyway, so as I've told her, immediately her face has dropped to this sympathy look, and I thought, my brain went, why is she looking at me like that?
Don't pity me.
Why is she looking at me like that?
I'm proud of myself.
Yeah. I obviously was anxious to go back and things like that, but I was excited. And people do, they automatically go, oh no, and it's like, oh no, please don't do that, because people, the stigma around counselling and therapy and mental health is, well, there must be something really wrong with you.
Do you know what's funny? And so sometimes I do have to catch myself sometimes. Like, being brutally honest and human here, I do have to catch myself sometimes. What you said about having someone almost kind of look at you like sympathetically and almost kind of like pitying you, I struggle not to look at people that don't go to counselling and don't have a coach or go to therapy with those eyes and with that energy behind it, because look, every single one of us is carrying pain to some degree. Every single one of us has some form of trauma. It doesn't have to be abuse. It doesn't have to be, like the worst of the worst that you can think of. It can be something like, a feeling of not getting your mother or father's attention, and we've all got pain and trauma.
Well, that's the thing about trauma, is it's not based upon the situation. Trauma isn't what happened. It is how you felt or how you feel. And
how you were able to deal with it.
And I think, that's a very big misconception with trauma, is people think, well, something really little in someone's eyes, they think, well, that's not trauma. You have to have, literally, as you say, you must have been abused, you must have been, can't think about trauma now.
Yeah, I know.
Childhood trauma.
It
has to be something. People always assume it has to be something really big that then they can go, Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
That must have been really hard for you.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like the
it's not
whole
measured.
human experience is hard.
Yeah.
Like, let's be real. Being a human is hard. So this is why I'm so passionate about investing in myself and getting the support that I need. Now, I won't say that it's always been like that. In fact, it's only been the case for a handful of years. Like previously, I probably wasn't even aware of like my own stuff and like my pain, and so I was just going through my life unconsciously, jumping from one experience to the next, getting pissed, doing not really having a clue why my life was playing out how it was playing out, and it was only because of like the really painful experiences that I wasn't able to cope with that led me to reach out and have a coach and go to counselling, and it's absolutely not something that we should be ashamed of and that there should be stigma around. In fact, I think it should be celebrated even more than getting a mortgage or buying a car or whatever, because what's more important than yourself? And especially, I'm talking about parents here as well, because when I say that, I know that there will be parents watching saying, my kids are more important than me. But if you're not at your best and you're struggling to love yourself and you're always not highly critical of yourself, you're indirectly teaching your kids that, which is why it's so vital that we work through our own stuff and don't see it as a weakness but see it as a strength.
That's the thing as well, is like even with like trauma and types of trauma as well, is I think because people have that notion that trauma is something that's really the severity of it is very high. It has to be considered trauma. That's not true. Trauma isn't measured on severity, but people, even women that have a child, that can cause trauma.
Yeah.
Obviously, as we know, what's it called?
Postnatal depression.
Yeah, that. Things like that. That is having a child can be traumatic. Say you had a really traumatic birth, so you don't have a child again because you're anxious and all of these things. It's your response to, and I'm not saying that every mother or dad is traumatized because they have a child. I'm not, but that's just an example of that trauma is not measured on situational severity, as we were saying. It's measured upon how you cope and how you feel and how you carry it. So
I love the wisdom of trauma. Dr. Gabor Mate, his definition of trauma is, and I'll probably fuck this quote up, but it's basically along the lines of trauma isn't the thing that happened to you. Trauma is a result of you having to try and deal with that thing that happened to you on your own and not having the support that you need to work through that situation or that experience. Which, say for instance, let's talk about childhood trauma, for instance. So something might have happened in your childhood, like let's say, I don't know, your parent was absent through alcohol, an alcoholic that wasn't really there for you. The trauma is the fact that you didn't have your father there for you when you needed, his love and support. It's not the fact that your dad was an alcoholic. And also when you think about, like twins, one twin can have a completely different life to the other one, which proves it's not about the situation, it's about how we cope with that situation. Let's read these comments. Debbie. Oh, thanks, Debbie. That's interesting because for me the credentials were a block to go into counselling. It felt too formal, too scientific, and I thought it won't be able to help me much. And oh God, I was wrong.
That's interesting though, to see the flip side of the coin, because I think obviously we can become very biased. I'm very biased, I know I am. So that is quite interesting. Yeah,
do you know what? I'm glad that Abiram said that actually, because I felt exactly the same way. Like, I had worked with coaches for probably a couple of years before I even considered counselling, and it was you going to counselling when we moved up here. Well, we were in, this was last year.
The north.
Yeah. It was you going to counselling and hearing you talk about counselling that inspired me to then go to counselling as well.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about that is, I keep drawing on my experience, my first counselling. But what's interesting is that the second time that I went to counselling and I moved up here and I got a new counsellor, she's the best of the best.
She is amazing.
In my humble opinion, is how me going a second time round had an effect on you, whereas the first time round we were knocking around, but and maybe that obviously there are going to be other factors into maybe I didn't speak about it as much with you, but obviously you knew I was going and things like that. So it's I think it's reflective in for me in how well I but like connected with the counsellor I had a year ago and the same one I have today than I had 3 or 4 years ago.
So that, for me, is absolutely what I believe, that realistically, and this is obviously my own opinion, realistically, I couldn't care less what credentials you've got. I don't care what letters you've got before your name. For me, I literally couldn't give a shit. All I need to know is that I trust you, and I trust you with my stuff because it's vulnerable, it's scary, it feels unsafe telling someone. So for me, safety is the biggest thing for me, and as soon as I feel safe with someone, I will open up. And for me, it's about the relationship with that person. It's not about their title or their credentials or whatever. But I can see why for some it could be.
Do you know what? This actually might be a differing. Is that right?
Yeah, different. Yeah.
Differing opinion between you and me. So tell me if it is. Oh my god.
It's gone again.
I always do this. Oh yeah, what you were saying about credentials and that place of safety and things like that. I think what is different I would say personally, not that I have much coaching experience, I don't, but I would consider coaching to be next level on from counselling in the respect of how you deal with your emotions and things like that, because I think counselling, I'm not saying coaching is forceful because that sounds aggressive.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, for example, counselling, you'll go to counselling and my counsellor, she doesn't ask me 10,000 questions and she doesn't push me for an answer. She'll ask me some questions. She won't push me for an answer if I choose not to respond.
Yeah.
And if I choose to skip over what she said, she will allow me, but she will still bring it back. And also, in that moment as well, she'll be observing, as a counsellor would be observing your body language and things like that. To which point she then may say, she said to me last week, she said, how do you feel about that word? Because your leg moved when you said that, and things like that. Whereas I think coaching is very, I don't mean it in terms of aggression and like a harsh kind of way, but I think it's next level in the respect of let's cut the bullshit, basically.
Yeah.
Answer the question, but not like that.
No. I can absolutely see how you might perceive it that way, and I'm not saying that it isn't that way. For me personally, I spoke to Sarah. I don't know whether we've mentioned this, but I ended up having the same counsellor as Charis. After she'd worked with her the first time, I ended up working with her. And anyway, we were just speaking in one of our sessions about like coaching and counselling, and like we were coming towards the end of my counselling journey, I suppose you would call it. And she said to me that, you know, there are a lot of crossovers, and you can you can carry, you know, some of these therapeutic practices over into your coaching. And I like to think, and I would hope that my clients and the clients that have worked with me previously or currently still are working with me, I hope that they would also feel that I do hold space, and I don't just try and probe. That obviously is a part of it, because, you know, our subconscious mind might, you know, like you said about professional, and, you know, I also have to be aware to kind of pick up on certain things. But a big part of the way I coach, I personally feel, is allowing people the space to be able to just talk. Because for me personally, and I'm sure for you, that was the most beneficial thing. Being able to actually have someone in front of me and just be able to say whatever is on my mind, whatever I'm feeling, all my like fears and insecurities and what I'm struggling with, and just being able to say it. That's almost like a cathartic experience in itself. But you almost, that almost is a lot of the work, actually just being able to say it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think I can completely agree with what you're saying about coaching can seem quite forceful, because I'm sure at times maybe I've probed, hopefully not too much, but to the degree that you explained. And I definitely think that there are similarities, but I can completely understand exactly what you're saying about counselling and how coaching can be sometimes a little forceful.
The thing is as well, actually, that when I think about it is, I didn't want to use the word forceful. I couldn't think specifically of a different word right now.
No, but that makes sense.
But the similarity is, although it sounds very different, there actually is similarity because it's just articulated in a different way. Because in counselling, from my own experience, especially last year, I'd try and skim over something. Oh, don't think about that. Oh, don't think about that. You're alright, thanks. Leave me alone. I would skim over it, but for some crazy reason, if not that week, the week after, or the week after, it comes back around again.
Yeah. They
bring it back around again, if not straight in that moment. And I think probably what, you know, so the styles, I think, between counselling and coaching are slightly different, but I think they bear a lot of similarities. And I think probably what is similar as well is the way that you would facilitate each client as with a counsellor would be different. Because you know, you can read their language, their capacity, if you will, their body language, all of that. You would adapt as with a counsellor. But yeah.
I do think that there is a difference with that kind of space being face to face rather than through a screen.
Yeah, I do.
Like, and I've said to you, like, this is definitely something that I will be doing. I will be doing face-to-face coaching, because I love the face-to-face element. It's, for me personally, when I went to counselling and when I've had coaching, it feels more vulnerable for me to be in the same room as someone, with them looking at me and me sharing, essentially me sharing myself. That feels more vulnerable.
I think it also feels more powerful.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't like online stuff specifically, so I think it's more empowering personally. But because you can read someone's whole body in person,
And it's that's a good point, because it is actually easier to pick up on someone's energy when you're in the same room as them.
Well, exactly. Like, you know, I do it all the time. I've been doing it throughout this whole thing. Like, I'm sitting here, like, you know, picking my fingers, like, oh, I'm anxious. And that's what I would do in counselling. And another big thing is as well, and I know you have, like, you know, webcamming, but
you
know, but that's such an old word.
Zoom.
Webcamming. Zoom.
You're always taking piss out of me. You're being the old one.
Contagious. Is so you're doing it again. I've got to practice on this. But yeah, what's different also is eye contact. I know that there is obviously eye contact through Zoom, and cameras like that, whatever, platforms like that. But I think it's it goes hand in hand with energy and body language in the physical sense. Because I know personally, as I'm sure a lot of people do, when you're uncomfortable about something, you're looking around the room.
You look away.
Yeah, looking at your cat. And especially, I especially do this, if I know I'm going to cry, because I'm prone to try and cut it off as quick as I can, which isn't helpful because I need a release, otherwise I wouldn't cry. But when I know I'm going to cry, or I am crying, I will look at the floor, I will look at the corner of the room, I will look at everywhere but her, and when I draw my attention back, that's when I'm just on the edge, I've cut it off, and then I smile at her. Even with tears still running down my face, I smile at her, and she knows me by now, she knows, I've lost her, cut her off, she's cut off, and I've cut off. Yeah. And then I start talking about someone else. And this may be what you mean about it being forceful, like it, and I experience this with anyone I work with. It was me as well. Like I done exactly that, and what I will do is ask them, like, feel exactly what's coming up, because in that moment I can see them. You can see the emotion there, and it needs to. It's intense, and it needs stressing. To be expressed. And when they're looking away or looking down, you can see their like mouth getting really dry, or however they're presenting in that moment. Then that's the very moment that I would say, what are you feeling right now? Or just allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. And in my experience with counselling, I never got that. And I think for me, and it may sound like I'm kind of blowing my own trumpet here, which I suppose to some degree I kind of am, but she even said to me, like, because you're so self-aware, you jump straight to like trying to understand. You're almost understanding it before you've even like said it and expressed it. That's where you don't really feel it. Yeah. You've struggled to feel it. And this is why a lot of my work with my clients now, and my own work personally, is connecting to how I'm feeling, which is why, as soon as we come on here, I said, like, right now I'm feeling a little anxious, I feel a little nervous. It's because otherwise it's so easy for me to just go through every single moment without actually allowing myself the time and the space to connect with how I'm feeling. And it's important that we connect to how we're feeling, because our feelings and our emotions guide us. They show us like our next step, and they work for us. And I think, when it comes to crying and stuff like that, we've almost kind of been led to believe that crying's a weakness, haven't we? Yeah. And it's something to be almost embarrassed about, because, like, for instance, when you cry, how many times have you cried and then apologised for crying? Do you know what? It's interesting, because I know a lot of people would do that. I don't do that. No. Because, and the reason I know I don't do that is because as soon as I've done it, I'm like, oh my God. Who do you think you are? Why have you just done that? Why have you just shown, unless I'm alone, why have you, and I don't cry alone often, I don't actually cry often, but why have you just shown that? So in my brain, I ain't going to apologise, because if I've apologised that I've just cried, then it's like, I've acknowledged I've just cried, they've acknowledged I've just cried, and I just want to pretend that I didn't just cry. Oh, so the reason why you wouldn't is because it makes it real. Yeah, so I don't say it, but I know a lot of people do, like... Yeah. Yeah, I can think of people right now who go, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Yeah, the funny thing is, like, when we cry, we apologise for crying, yet when you laugh, you don't apologise for laughing. What are you apologising for? That you're expressing emotion. That's literally it. You're expressing emotion. I think we apologise as well because, or people apologise because they feel people assume that crying to someone is passing a burden, and that's exactly the thing that it's not. When you are able, or someone is able, when someone is able to cry to you, that is a compliment. And sometimes I, used to be very awkward if people cry. I'd be like, oh. Fortunately, my job showed me too many things that I have to, that I've grown through and I'm still growing through, and dealing with someone crying is something I'm now growing through, because I used to be so bad at it. And it's so complimentary when someone does. When you see someone that have their walls so high and they drop them, it is so complimentary. But for the person that's crying, we always assume, oh my god, I'm a burden. So we automatically apologise for doing so, even though the other person's not thinking that. The other person, they're thinking, oh, for fuck's sake, why are they crying? Like, what am I meant to do with that? They're not. They're thinking, wow, this person feels safe enough to let down those walls and let out that emotion that is clearly there, because we don't just cry for no reason.
Yeah.
Well, some people might, but
I think the reason why that is because we're so uncomfortable with our own pain. We spend every minute of every day trying to avoid our own pain. Like we'll spend hours watching Netflix. We'll be scrolling social media for hours. We'll go out getting pissed. We'll sit on the sofa and eat junk food. We're constantly just distracting ourselves from the pain that is underneath it. And if we can't look at our own pain and feel our own pain, we'll struggle looking and being able to hold space for someone else's, because we're uncomfortable with our own.
Mm-hmm.
And it's again bringing it back round again. This is why another reason why it's so important in any relationship that we have to always work on ourselves, because the more we work on ourselves, the better equipped we are to be in a relationship with someone else.
And I know so many people, like, it's that same old quote, that same old expression that, what was that quote like? You know, when it's like, if you don't love yourself, then how can anyone else? Or
Yeah.
Something like that. I know it's not like that. I haven't heard it for a few years now, to be honest. But I know so many people that hate that expression and they believe that it's so untrue, but it's not, because if you loved yourself as much as you pretend you do, you wouldn't be engaging in those behaviours, that all of the things that distract you from looking after your mental health, looking after your emotional well-being, looking after your physical body, whatever it is, you wouldn't not do it if you loved yourself. And as we know, like attracts like, and what you think you receive and all of that, and that's often why people end up in relationships that aren't good for them, relationships that or end up with partners that will degrade,
manipulate and take advantage.
And will continue to, they know you're vulnerable, they know you have little self-worth, and that makes you an easy target as well.
And this, especially with your job, like I'm sure, and this is kind of going slightly off topic, and it's a kind of dangerous subject to touch on, but a perpetrator doesn't choose someone that that respects themselves and loves themselves and is strong. A perpetrator chooses someone that they know that they can manipulate. Now, I'm by no means saying that if you're not working on yourself, you deserve anything like that. I'm absolutely not saying that. But what I will say is, those perpetrators that are manipulating people and abusing their partners and stuff like that, they also don't love themselves.
Yeah, that's the most ironic thing.
Yeah.
And to be honest, that's the most ironic thing, and it also correlates a lot with all the people that are buying, fast cars, big houses, expensive brands, because all they're doing as well is faking it as well. They're faking that they're really strong and they're really amazing, and you're so lucky to have me, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But they equally are in pain. They equally have a lot of trauma. No one just becomes a perpetrator. They just don't. And no one that, obviously, as we all know, no one that truly loves themselves is a horrible person.
Yeah, it's going to hurt someone else.
You just don't.
No. Every single time I've hurt someone, every single time I've had pain inside me.
Yeah.
and I've been acting out of pain.
I feel like this is a whole. I feel like we've thrown off topic.
Yeah, we will wrap it up in a minute, but
I think we should just quickly talk about, like, for the people that, you know, if you've ever considered counselling, if you've ever been, if you feel like it's something you're interested in, or you just recognise, or coaching. Sorry. Why do I go again?
Coaching isn't professional, so don't worry about coaching.
with my biases, counselling. These are the numbers.
You know, my fiance that is supposed to lift me up, and it says I'm not professional. So there you go. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, but because I was just going to draw upon, like, I just wanted to quickly talk about our experiences, like, in counselling, because I can't speak well. You're biased for your job, so and I'm not a client, so but yeah, like, just for anyone that, you know, is considering counselling or coaching, that I just think we should quickly, you know, because we've been on a while, I think we should just quickly speak about, you know, just the emotions, really. I just want you to kind of
I think for
how was it for you? The good and the bad. Not that any of counselling's bad, it's not.
So
breakthrough in the pain.
Yeah, okay, so the probably the only criticism I would probably have about counselling was I recognised I needed something, and this probably lends itself quite nicely to the word that Charis used, a little more forceful. I needed something to kind of call me out isn't the right term I'm looking for, but kind of ask me a couple of questions that would kind of propel me forward.
To probe you a bit more.
Yeah, perhaps. But at the same time, the space that my counsellor held and allowed me to just speak into and open up about everything, absolutely everything, like, you know, even some stuff that I haven't spoke to you about, and I'm sure you've spoke to your counsellor about stuff that you haven't told me about. Being able to just open up completely in like a judgment-free zone, knowing full well that anything and everything that you say will be received with love, is the most healing thing that I have ever experienced. And I don't say that lightly.
Yeah.
But being able to talk about all those, like, you know, the most tender, vulnerable parts of ourselves that we've shamed and rejected and, you know, told ourselves that no one will love that part of me, and, you know, we've kind of masked up and tried to, like, you know, make sure that no one ever sees or hears about that part. Being able to talk about that and being able to bring that part out into the open and just say, look, this is me. All masks off, completely bare, this is me. And being able to have someone to just see you is so powerful. So powerful.
I think what's quite powerful about counselling as well is obviously it's someone that's completely unbiased. Because the thing is, you don't even have to go to counselling and feel like you have to conjure up something really big that you've never told anyone, and it needs to be really extravagant and amazing. You can go and speak about the things that you might even speak to your friends about. You know, I'll speak about things I've spoken to you about, but because that person that is holding that space for you is unbiased, they don't offer you. You know when you say to someone, or you just want to offload, and someone offers you some advice. You're like,
I didn't ask for advice.
Yeah, you may not even register that you didn't ask this advice, but you know exactly, because we're creatures of habit, you know exactly what they're about to say. You know they're going to go, oh, there.
Why don't you?
Not that bad.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Or they'll jump in with their stuff.
Yeah, and what obviously a counsellor does is because they're a completely unbiased person, they recognise your pain in a way that someone knows you never will. And they sympathise with you in a way that someone knows you never will. And what's really amazing about that is just the simple words that someone you may know has said to you already, it's okay, or it's going to be okay.
It's that validation, isn't it?
It feels so different, and it feels so safe. When it's someone you know, you're just like, well, they have to say that. That's
and also,
mum.
you don't know whether that's going to be shared. Yeah.
Yeah, a counsellor, who are they going to tell?
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's that safety.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm a creep and I just love trauma and I just want to work for it. But I think counselling is amazing, and I think it's probably going to be something that I utilise probably for the rest of my life. If not counselling, coaching, that's obviously an avenue I'm yet to explore. But I really do think, and the thing is as well is I think what deters a lot of people is it's so hard emotionally. And
let's talk about that actually. How, because, and I want to bring it back because you said that the second time that you went to your counsellor, you were able to speak about it because you're proud of it. Like what was your process like of now being proud of it? Leading up to that moment. What was your process leading up to that moment?
What, being proud of going back now?
Yeah.
Oh right, yes. I've been 3 times. Before people get mixed up, I've been 3 times. This is my third round. So the third round is the proud round. The first was half proud. But yeah, because I'd done it, it would have been I'd have done it twice. But because I'd done it last year for how many months did I do it for? 6, 7 months? Is that too long?
5 or 6, wasn't it?
Something like that, yeah. Because I'd done that already with a counsellor that I already knew, and because I grew a lot in those sessions, and I came away and I've grown a lot before going back a year later, is the reason that No. Oh, hang on.
Sorry, the cat has jumped up on the side and picked up the chicken bone. Oh, poor boy.
Can't eat that. It's dangerous. God, what a curveball. Yeah, the process of being proud this time is that I don't have any shame. I think that's the biggest thing I had. And I don't even know if shame, I hate the word shame. The specific words I just hate. I hate the word shame because I don't think I felt shame the first time round. I think I was scared. I don't think I was ashamed. I just think I was scared the first time round to delve into those uglier parts and that past and all of those emotions. Whereas, and I think this time round is I know how beneficial it is. I know how amazing I felt when I wrapped up last year. Or was it early this year? Was it actually? No, I can't remember. I don't know when it was.
It was last year.
Yeah, when I wrapped up last year, I knew when I was ready to wrap up, and I just remember how amazing I felt. I felt like I was on cloud 9. I remember coming to my last session with a song that, I don't know if people are going to know, I'm not going to say it, but with a song that really resonated with the freedom that I felt. And I remember going for a walk afterwards, and I literally could have been walking on a cloud. I could not see anyone else walking down the road because I thought I was invincible. I thought I was amazing. And do you know what? In that moment, I actually was. And I still am. And I always will be.
And that's such a good point because I think that there may be like a misconception that if you've been to counselling or if you've worked through some stuff with a coach or a therapist or whoever, it's done. Like, that's it, done. That's sorted.
Yeah.
But that isn't the case. Like, human beings are so complex, and we're constantly having different experiences, different interactions, different conversations, different things coming into our awareness that will trigger something else.
That's what I was going to say. Like, the thing is like we think we're done in that moment. And she said to me in my last session last year, she said, Charis, you can always come back. And I thought, I don't need to come back.
Yeah.
Done so. I'm finished. I then got a new job. I was then exposed to new experiences that then trigger. And this is the thing. You can be triggered at any specific moment by anything. Yeah. You can trigger something in your subconscious or your unconscious, to which then it comes to fruition. You're like, what are you doing here?
I thought I dealt with you.
Yeah, I'm now talking about things I touched on last year, but I said last year, I don't need to talk about that.
Yeah.
Because
You weren't ready to.
it wasn't, I didn't have access. Think about it as in like, it's like computers and like passwords. I didn't have the password last year.
Yeah, no, that is. That's
speak
a
about
good analogy. I like
it
that.
now. So, you know, I think, yeah, as you say, people they go to counselling, they think, well, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm healed. I'm done.
Yeah.
And the thing is with growth is it's never done.
No.
But what's so amazing is each time you level up.
And
Whether you feel like it or not, you level up.
and that word level, there's a quote that I absolutely love, and it's every new level brings a new devil, and it's so true because the more aware you become, that you've got more stuff at that level, and then you start working through that stuff. You become more aware and more healed. Then you realise you've got more stuff to work through on that level, and it's never ending. Like no one is ever done. We're just not. And I think if we can wrap this up, I think compassion is really the biggest thing that we can have for ourselves. Compassion from the fact that, you know, we are in pain. Compassion for the fact that, you know, we have hurt people. Compassion for the fact that, you know, we're still going to do things that are going to hurt people, but being responsible for it. And acknowledging the fact that yes, whatever we went through was not our fault, but it is our responsibility.
Yeah, and I think just looking back as well, you know, with compassion and responsibility is that's so important when you do look back on those previous versions of yourself. When I do it, I look back on the things I did and the people I hurt. You know, hurt people. And I used to be so done in about it. I used to be so guilty, but here we go, mind bias. Counselling also enabled me to forgive myself, and that's so important. And to look back on that person and almost feel like, do you know what? You almost become that person. It always feels like that person is unrecognisable to you because you couldn't imagine acting like that now, even though in the future we're going to hurt people because it's a fact. It's whatever, I can't think. But yeah, I think it is just looking back and being empathetic.
Yeah.
Really.
And I think that's a process. Once we start to distance ourselves from past versions of ourselves, the initial thought process that we go through is, oh my god, like what the fuck was I doing then, or like I was such a shit person then. I think that's the initial thought process. Once you can distance yourself enough, but then when you continue to work through your stuff, you can then begin to look at those past versions through the eyes of compassion and empathy.
It's looking back and just thinking, do you know what?
I was in a lot of pain.
Yeah, that's what I think a lot when I reflect on things that I've said and done.
Yeah.
I was in a lot of pain, and do you know, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I'll say, do you know what, again.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think the takeaway from this, if we can wrap it up, is
Go get some help, innit?
perfectly said. Go get some help. But seriously.